Hello there, my dear. I have some time on my hands before bed. I figure I'll read an old historical story in English from an old scroll called The Judges, from chapter 19, the story of Moses' grandson and his time to and fro from Jerusalem and Israel. Chapter 19. It came to pass in those days, when there was no king in Israel, that there was a certain Levite sojourning on the side of Mount Ephraim, and he took to him a concubine out of Bethlehem, Judah. Concubine meaning wife. And his concubine left him and went away to her father's house, unto Benjamin, Judah, which is about 25 miles south from Ephraim, and was there 4 whole months. And her husband arose and went after her to speak unto her, to speak friendly to her, and to bring her again, having his servants with him, and a couple of donkeys. And she brought him unto her father's house. And when the father of the damsel saw him, he rejoiced to meet him. And his son-in-law, the damsels, and his father-in-law, the damsel's father, retained him and abode with him 2 days. They ate and drank and lodged there. And it came to pass, when they arose in the morning, that he rose up to depart, and the damsel's father said unto his son-in-law, Comfort thine heart, the morsel of bread, and afterward go your way. And they sat down, they ate and drank, both of them together. This story is roughly about 1100 BC, considering Moses' death and Joshua's time in Jerusalem. Anyways, they sat down, and they did eat and drink, both of them together. For the damsel's father had said unto men, Be content, pray thee, tarry all nights, and be happy. Let your heart be filled with merriment. And when the man rose up, his father urged him, therefore he lodged there again. And he rose early in the morning on the 5th day to depart. And the damsel's father said, Comfort thine heart, I pray thee. And they tarried afternoon, and they did eat, the both of them. And when the man rose up to depart, he and his concubine, his wife, and his servant, his father-in-law, the damsel's father, said unto him, Behold, now the day draweth evening. I pray you, tarry all night. Behold, the day groweth to an end. Lodge here, let thine heart be merry. And tomorrow get early on your way, that thou mayest go home. But the man would not tarry that night. He rose up and departed, and came over against Jebus, which is Jerusalem. And there with him the 2 donkeys they brought, and his wife was with him. And when they were by Jerusalem, when they were by Jerusalem, the day was far spent. The day went on. The servant said unto his master, Come, I pray thee, let's go into the city of those that live in Jerusalem, and stay with them. And his master said unto him, We will not turn aside hither into the city of a stranger, that it is not of the children of Israel. We'll go over to Gibeah. And he said unto his servant, Come, let us draw near to the one of these places to lodge all night in Gibeah and Rabah. And they went on and went their way, and the sun went down upon them where they were by Gibeah, which belongeth to Benjamin. And they turned aside thither to go in to lodge in Gibeah. And when he went in, they sat down in a street of the city, for there was no man that took them into the house to lodge. But eventually there came an older man from his work at the fields at night time, was also of Mount Ephraim, and he sojourned in Gibeah. But the men of the place were from Benjamin. When he lifted up his eyes, he saw a wayfaring man in the street of the city, The old man said, Whither goest thou? And when comest thou? And he said, We're passing from Bethlehem, Judah, toward the side of Mount Ephraim, from whence then we're heading north. I went to Bethlehem, Judah, but now I'm going to the house of the Lord, and there is none that receiveth me to their house. We have no place to stay. Yet there is both straw and provender for the donkeys, and there is bread and wine for us, and for your wife, and for the young man which is thy servant, and there is no want of anything. There is no lack of anything. The old man said, Well, be at peace. However, whatever you need, ask me for it. Just don't sleep in the streets. So he brought him into his house, gave provender unto the donkeys, and they washed their feet, and they did eat and drink. Now, when they were making their hearts merry, behold, the men of the city, certain sons of Belial, arrived and beset the house round about and be at the door, and spake to the master of the house, the old man, saying, Bring forth the man that came into the house, that we may know who he is. The man, the master of the house, went out, said, Nay, my brother, nay, I pray you do not wickedly, seeing that this man came into mine house. Do not do this evil. Do not want to tell you where it is. If you want to know, behold, I have a daughter, a maiden, and he has his wife, and they will bring out, that you may know who. You may humble ye them, do with them that seem good unto you. But unto this man do not avile a thing. But the men would not hearken to him. So the man took his concubine, and brought her forth unto them. The man, being Moses' descendant here, Levit, and he brought her forth to the sons of Belial, and they destroyed her. They knew her, tortured her until the morning. But when the day began to spread, then they let her go. And came the woman in the dawning of the day, and fell down at the man's house, where her lord was light. But she made it back, and her lord arose in the morning, opened the door of the house, went out his way, and behold, his woman was fallen down. His wife was at the door of his house, and her hands were the grasp unto the door, the threshold. And he said unto her, Arise, let us be going. But she didn't answer. And the man put her on his donkey, and took her to his own home. And when he came into his house, he was upset that he was found her dead. So he decided to take his knife and divide her into 12 pieces, and divided her and brought her all to all the coast of Israel. He walked the entire country, which is roughly 50 miles. He walked 50 miles, and leaving a powder for her throughout the 50-mile area. And then when he had finished this, it was so that they said this was obviously one of the most terrible things that could ever happen. So only consider good things. Yep, chapter 20. That was the most terrible thing concerning since Moses and Israel left Egypt to come to Israel. Yeah, they made it there about 1445, you see. 40 years. Alright, then all the children of Israel, the entire country, the congregation was gathered together as one man from Dan to Beersheba, with the land of Gilead unto the Lord in Mizpah. And the chief of all the people, even all the tribes of Israel, presented themselves in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 footmen that drew sword. Now the children of Benjamin heard that the children of Israel were gone up to Mizpah. Then said the children of Israel, Tell, what is this evil that happened? And Levit, the husband of the woman that was slain, answered and said, I came into Gibeah, there belongeth to Benjamin, to lodge, to stay there. And the men of Gibeah rode up against me, beset the house, about me by night, and thought to slay me, and my concubine they forced, she's dead. And I took my concubine and cut her in pieces after cannot arise her from the dead. And I divided her out the country, all Israel, for such the great evil that was done there. Behold, all the children of Israel give here your advice to counsel. All the people arose as one man, say, will not any of us go to his tent, neither any of us into his house. But now this shall be the thing which we did in Gibeah, go by lot against it. We will take 10 men by 100 throughout all the tribes of Israel, and 100 of thousands and thousands of the 10,000s to fetch victuals for the people, that they may do when they come to Gibeah. And now this is the war. To come to Gibeah to Benjamin, according to all the evil that was done. They're going to find who did the evil. And so all the men of Israel gathered against the city as one man. And the tribe of Israel sent through all the tribe of Benjamin, saying, what wickedness is done among you? Now therefore, unto Benjamin with this occurred, deliver us those evildoers of Belial which are in Gibeah, that we may put them to death and put away such evil from Israel. But the children of Benjamin ignored their voice, and all those they considered of Israel. But the children of Benjamin gathered themselves together out of the cities into Gibeah to go to battle against the children of Israel. The children of Benjamin were numbered at one time of the cities 26,000 men that drew the sword beside the inhabitants of Gibeah, which were numbered 700 chosen men. Among all this people were 700 chosen men left-handed. Everyone can sling stones at a hairbreadth and not miss. Now all the men of Israel beside Benjamin were numbered 400,000 that drew sword, all these men of war. And all the children of Israel arose All the children of Israel arose in the morning and camped against Gibeah. The men of Israel went out to battle against Benjamin, but the men of Israel put themselves in array to fight against them at Gibeah. And the children of Benjamin came forth out of Gibeah and destroyed down to the ground of the Israelites that day 22,000 men. And the men of Israel, encouraged themselves and set their battle again in array the place where they put themselves array the first day. And the children of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until even, and asked counsel of the Lord, saying, shall I go up again to battle against the children? Shall I go up against the battle, the children of Benjamin my brother? The Lord said, go against him. Now the children of Israel came near against the children of Benjamin the second day. Benjamin went forth against them out of Gibeah the second day, and destroyed down to the ground of the children of Israel again 18,000, and all these drew the sword. Then all the children of Israel and all the people went out, came up unto the house of God, and wept, and sat there before the Lord, and fasted that day, and to eat and offered burnt offerings, peace offerings unto the Lord. And the children of Israel inquired of the Lord, for the ark of the covenant of God was there in those days. The ark of the covenant of God, I believe, is the 10 Commandments which Moses received as a tablet in the story that was hit by lightning, which wrote it, and his staff, I believe.
I grew up in a home, and
Moses' staff. 5, 6, 7, 8. Adjust the music to go with this. And it was the Ark of the Covenant with Moses' and commandments and his staff, which he carried from Egypt to Israel. Which had powers over the plagues. Then Aaron and Hur to win wars. Anyhow, the children of Israel inquired of the Lord, for the Ark of the Covenant was there in those days. And Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, stood before it in those days, saying, Shall I yet again go out to battle against Benjamin, my brother, or shall it cease? And let us go up, for tomorrow I will deliver them into thy hand. And Israel set leaders, liars, and wait round about Gibeah. Liars meaning with arrows, to make arrows and or snares. All the children of Israel went up against the children of Benjamin on the third day and put themselves in array, as at other times. Alright, now, anyways, moving on. The children of Benjamin went out against the people and were drawn away from the city and began to smite of the people and to kill, as at other times. In the highways of which one goeth up to the house of God, and the other to Gibeah, in the field about 30 men of Israel. And the children of Benjamin said, They are smitten down before us as the first. Let us flee and draw them from the city into the highways. And all the men of Israel rose up out of their place and put themselves in array at Baal Tamar. And the leaders in wait of Israel came forth out of their place even to meet the men of Gibeah. There came against Gibeah 10,000 chosen men, and the battle was sore, but they knew not that evil was near. Now the Lord smote Benjamin before Israel. The children of Israel destroyed of the Benjamites at 20 and 5,000 and 100 men, all drew the sword. So the children of Benjamin saw they were smitten, and the men of Israel gave place to the Benjamites, because they trusted unto the leaders' eyes and wait that they sat beside Gibeah. And leaders in wait hasted and rushed unto Gibeah, and the leaders in wait drew themselves along. They smote all the city with the edge of the sword. Now there was an appointed sign between the men of Israel and the leaders that wait, that they should make a great flame of smoke to rise up out of the city. And when the men of Israel were tired of the battle, Benjamin began to smite and to kill with the men of Israel about 30 persons, for they said, Surely they have smitten down before us in the first battle. But when the flame began to arise up out of the city with a pillar of smoke, the Benjamites looked behind them, and behold, the flame of the city ascended up to heaven. And when the men of Israel turned again, the men of Benjamin were amazed, and they saw that evil was come upon them. Therefore they turned their backs before the men of Israel to the way of the wilderness. But the battle overtook them, which came out of the cities. They destroyed in the midst of them. They enclosed the Benjamites round about and chased them, drove them down with ease over against Gibeah towards sunrising. And the fell of Benjamin, 18,000 men, all these men of valor. They turned and fled toward the wilderness unto the rock of Rimmon. And they gleaned of them in the highways 5,000 men, and pursued hard after them unto Gidom, and slew 2,000 men of them, so that all them which fell at day of Benjamin were 25,000 men that drew sword. All the men of valor, 6,000 men, turned and fled to the wilderness upon Rimmon, abode in the rock Rimmon for a month. And all the men of Israel turned again, until the children of Benjamin smote them with the edge of the sword, as well the men of every city, as the beast that all came to hand, that they set on fire all the cities they came to. Now, next chapter. Now the men of Israel had sworn in Mizpah, saying, There shall not any of us give his daughter to Benjamin to wife. And the people came to the house of God and abode there till even before God, and lifted their voices and wept sore, and said, O Lord God of Israel, why is this come to pass in Israel, that should be today one tribe lacking in Israel? And it came to pass in the morrow, that the people rose early and built there an altar, and offered burnt incense, burnt offerings, peace offerings. And the children of Israel said, Who is there among the tribes of Israel that came not up to the congregation unto the Lord? For they had great oaths concerning that came not up to the Lord to Mizpah, saying, He shall surely be put to death. Now the children of Israel repented them for Benjamin the brother, and said, There is one tribe cut off from Israel. Said, How shall we do for wives for them that remain, seeing we have sworn by the Lord that we will not give them our daughters to wife? And they said, What one is there of the tribe of Israel that came not up to Mizpah to the Lord? Behold, there came none to the camp from Jabesh Gilead to the assembly. For the people were numbered, and behold, there was none of the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead there. And the congregation sent thither 12,000 of the men of the valiantest, and commanded them, saying, Go and smite the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead with the edge of the sword, the women and the children, and this is the thing you shall do. You shall utterly destroy every male and every woman that lain with a man. Destroy any that's not virgin. They have found among the inhabitants of Jabesh 400 young virgins that had known no man by lying with any male. They brought them unto the camp of Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan. The land of the whole congregation sent them to speak to the children of Benjamin that were in Rock Rimmon, to call peaceably to them. Benjamin came again at that time. They gave them wives which they had saved the life of the women of Jabesh Gilead. Yet they sufficed them not. So the people repented them for Benjamin, because the Lord had made a breach in the tribes of Israel. And then the elders of the congregation said, How shall we do for wives for them that remain, seeing that the women are destroyed of Benjamin? And they said, There must be an inheritance for them that be escaped of Benjamin, a tribe be not destroyed from Israel. Albeit we may not give them wives of our daughters, for the children of Israel have sworn, saying, Cursed be he that giveth a wife to Benjamin. And they said, Behold, there is a feast of the Lord in Shiloh yearly, in the place which is on the north side of Bethel, on the east side of the highway that goeth up from Bethel to Shechem, the south of Lebanon. Therefore they commanded the children of Benjamin, saying, Go and lie in wait in the vineyards, and see, and behold, if the daughters of Shiloh come out to dance in dances, then come ye out of the vineyards. Catch you every man his wife of the daughters of Shiloh, and go to the land of Benjamin. And it shall be, when their fathers or their brethren came unto us to complain, then we will say unto them, Be favorable unto them for our sakes, because we have reserved not each man his wife in the war, for we did not give unto them at this time that we should be guilty. So the children of Benjamin did so. They took them wives according to the number of them that danced, whom they caught. And they went and returned to inheritance, prepared the cities, and dwelt in them. And the children of Israel departed thence at that time, every man to his tribe and to his family. They went out from thence, every man to his inheritance. And in those days there was no king in Israel at this point, so every man did as he wished to himself. End of chapter. End of book of Judges.